Have you ever thought about starting your very own podcast? You know, the one with amazing star guests and awesome content that leaves your audience speechless. But then quickly realized that it's not that easy and decided to push this idea aside. But even though you did, it still to this day lingers in your mind. Well, if that's the case, you came to the right place, because in the next couple of minutes you'll find out exactly how to launch a podcast that will knock the socks off of your listeners and will grow your business faster than you ever thought possible. Everybody knows having a podcast can open a lot of doors for you and your business. It's an amazing tool you can leverage to network with high-profile people and maybe even get them on your show. It's an amazing way to rapidly build your audience and hyper-engaged community. And in fact, according to Edison Research, most people who listen to podcasts are highly educated, affluent, and have a stable income. Meaning that having a podcast enables access to valuable clients that have money to spend with you. In other words, podcasts are probably one of the most cost-effective marketing strategies you can find today. Problem is, starting a podcast without any experience is a tough task. You have to figure out what type of setup will do wonders, but won't require you to spend a fortune. You have to know how to create the type of content that people will be head over heels with. You have to know how to book absolute legends and absolute superstars in your niche to hop on your podcast, be a guest, and deliver ungodly amounts of value to your listeners. And of course, you have to be able to separate yourself from the crowd, cut through the noise, and know how to get found on this thing called the internet. And it's probably the hardest task of all, because these days, everyone and their neighbor has a podcast. The ultimate solution right in front of you. In this special IM Checklist volume, I share the ultimate set of strategies to help you plan and launch highly successful podcasts. Cut through the noise and make sure they get found by your ideal customers. Once you'll go through the set of checklists inside, you'll be able to rise above the noise and create highly engaging content that keeps your listeners glued to their devices waiting for what's coming up next. But keep in mind that the strategies revealed inside are not about implementing the latest hack or taking advantage of some little-known loophole. No. The strategies you'll discover inside are tried and true methods that your favorite content creators and podcasters use to create authority, build massive communities, and inevitably grow their businesses. In other words, these checklists will give you wildly effective step-by-step strategies that you can literally print out, put them on the corner of your desk, and implement the steps daily to see all but guaranteed results. And frankly, what this volume of checklists can do for you is nothing short of life-changing. Checklist number 1: coming up with ideas and name for your podcast. When launching a podcast, the very first thing you must do is to come up with an idea and a name for your podcast. In some cases, it may not be as simple a task as it may seem from the first look. Which is why in this checklist we go over some tactics that will help you come up with $1 million idea and an amazing name. Checklist number 2: equipment checklist. When launching your first podcast, you have to figure out what type of setup will do wonders, but won't require you to spend a fortune. If you don't have any previous experience, it might be a pretty rough task. In this checklist, we help you choose a perfect equipment for your podcast based on your goals and your budget. Checklist number 3: select your podcast format. There are many different podcast formats you can choose from. Which one is perfect for you solely depends on your preferences, but in this checklist we show you all possible formats and help you make the right decision for you. Checklist number 4: create your podcast outline for the first episode. If you want your podcast episodes to be engaging and entertaining, you can't just wing it. You have to come prepared. The best way to do that is by creating an outline for your podcast, and in this checklist we will show you exactly how to do that. Checklist number 5: create a cover art for your podcast. Cover art is exactly what's going to represent your podcast in terms of branding, which means you have to take it seriously. In this checklist you guide you through a couple of ways to create an amazing cover art for your podcast. Checklist number 6: setting up your recording. When you are happy with your choice of name for the podcast, the title of your episode, and you have the necessary equipment for the podcast, it is time to record it. In this checklist we're going to go over some crucial pointers you have to follow when you're recording your episode. Checklist number 7. Edit your podcast. Unless you're perfect and someone who nails everything with one take, you're most likely going to have to edit your podcast. In this checklist we go over the editing process to make sure you're prepared when the time comes. Checklist number 8. Hosting and your RSS feed. Once you have everything prepared and ready, it's time for you to choose the home for your podcast. In this checklist we go over multiple possibilities where you can host your podcast. Checklist number 9. Submitting your podcast to directories. The next step after recording your podcast is submitting it to different directories so your audience can listen and download your content. In this checklist we go over all of the directories where you can submit your podcast and the right ways to go about it. Checklist number 10. Publishing your podcast to a website. Even though most hosts provide a free website when you sign up with them, creating your own website gives you much more control. Which is why in this checklist we show you how to create your own website and use it to publish your podcasts. Checklist number 11. Driving traffic and promoting your website. Now that you've got your very first podcast episode up, it's time to start driving listeners to it. In this checklist we show you the best ways of driving traffic to your podcast website. Checklist number 12. Creating a compelling call to action. A good CTA is an essential to encourage people to listen to your podcast. Developing a strategic, actionable, and persuasive call to action helps you to grow your audience and gain more listeners, and we show you exactly how to do that in this checklist. Checklist number 13. Choosing a booking system for your guests. How amazing would it be to book an awesome guest for your podcast? Someone you've always been looking up to? In this checklist we share the best systems for booking awesome guests for your shows. Checklist number 14. Tracking your podcast. If you don't track, you can't grow. You have to know who your listeners are and where they are coming from. In this checklist we show you how to set up tracking that will track all of that. Checklist number 15. Increasing your listenership. Growing your audience sometimes can seem hard. However, in this checklist we compiled the most effective ways to increase your listenership. Checklist number 16. Monetizing your podcast through affiliate marketing. Podcasts can also be a very profitable stream of income. One of the ways you can monetize it is affiliate marketing. In this checklist we show you the best practices for monetizing your podcast with affiliate offers. Checklist number 17. Podcast consistency and marketing plan. To be able to grow your podcast you must be consistent and have a clear plan. In this checklist we discuss the best practices and the most effective ways to grow your podcast. Checklist number 18. Monetizing your podcast. Podcasts are not only extremely powerful marketing tools to promote your own business, but it can also be an additional income stream for you. There are countless ways to monetize a podcast and we go over them in great detail in this checklist. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and to get this amazing product check out the link in the description.